following up on that U.S. Starting anti-dumping duty probe of China chassis imports. The American producers of chassis filed trade petitions to combat illegal and unfair dumping and subsidized from China. That was back in July.
So, good afternoon, everybody on YouTube. Welcome. It's Peter on the microphone for Bear Bull Traders. You have with me
following up on that U.S. Starting anti-dumping duty probe of China chassis imports. The American producers of chassis filed trade petitions to combat illegal and unfair dumping.
So I'm going to cut off Benzinga just because, guys, Benzinga will start to talk over top of me. And I don't want to be broadcasting that on YouTube. I just realized I did earlier. So we got that taken care of now. Okay, well, we're sitting watching here as the market moved without me because I missed the opportunity to take that short trade. We were watching it. A couple people in the room managed to take it. So again, good for you. You were paying closer attention than I was. I was busy, doing duties I'm not used to. Mike's taken over for me, and as such, I didn't have to do all this technical setup for our close show. Dr. Jonathan Katz, are you out here? Is he out here and I'm not hearing him? Am I talking over top of him? I don't hear him. I know, I see. It is a thoughtful Thursday. Let's not forget, on Thoughtful Thursdays, we can have the good doctor. I see him. Oh, he's gone. Same mic as Carlos. Yeah, Carlos was having some challenges over the last few days, which is a shame, but it happens.
Hey there, Peter. Can you hear me now?
Oh, now I hear you in brilliant stereo clarity.
Okay. Nice to be with you. How are you today?
I am doing okay. It's been, it's been sort of a ho-hum type of day in the markets, but other than that, we are doing okay.
You flying solo today?
It looks like it. Mike is busy with a whole bunch of activities, so lackluster. Yes, Chris is calling today lackluster. I can't disagree with him. So, yes, but it's been lonely here this afternoon because not only is it quiet on the markets, I don't have my sidekicks, or maybe I'm their sidekick now. I'm not sure. Anyways, nobody's kicking my side. Let me just see here. Joe, you're asking a question for me. Review a stock and play. You're more concerned with the float size over the price. Me, yes, personally, absolutely. I'm more concerned about the size of the float than the price. I don't really care personally if the price is $5 or $500. Some people have a preferred price range. Some of that's comfort. Some of it's there can be technical bias as to the way stocks trade. I don't see that myself, but Yeah, I think it depends on personal preference, really. On the price. Float size, absolutely, I think you should worry about. Anyways, we do have Dr. Katz with us, and I didn't have a chance earlier to mention to you, if you do have questions, usually we start slow and then we build with a ton of questions for Dr. Katz. Please put them into the chat. I will look for them, and as will he, if I can actually speak properly. And yeah, we'll get those questions answered. One question might be worth asking on a day such as today, good sir. How do you, this is one of those days. We were talking earlier. Maybe it's not a question. I'll make a statement and you can comment to it. We were talking earlier, and I said, I find this is sort of what I would typically call a summer afternoon. We haven't had that many of them this year because there's actually been relatively good action in the markets, but typically, in years past as I've been trading, you get these afternoons where very little moves. When you do get a move, it's a big move and it's sudden, and you have to sort of sit and watch and watch and watch, and finally it happens, and like a sniper in the weeds, you got to be ready to shoot, because if you look away at that moment, you'll have missed the opportunity. We had an example mere moments ago, let me call it up here, on Facebook, where I actually took 2 short trades, and I was trying to get the short play. It came and it bounced, and it came and bounced, and then I was getting ready for the show, and look, I missed this big move. So, I took my attention away. So I was recommending to people, I said, I actually think a lot of people say, oh, this is boring, and leave. I think it's good practice to actually stick around these types of days and afternoons, because if there's one thing that most people need to practice, it's the ability to sit and analyze charts and stare at the markets and wait for your opportunity rather than just clicking at everything that moves.
Well, Peter, this is very appropriate question, because this is probably the number one thing that I've brought up with many traders during this week, just for that reason.
I bet.
I like to focus on the concept of patient aggressiveness. And so you could be lulled into complacency during, like you said, some of these summer days. The best traders are trying to not watch Netflix or other videos during the day, and maybe doing some kind of trading-oriented work, but keeping their eyes on the markets, so that you kind of stay focused and concentrating, because you never know when that one opportunity comes. And then actually it's very upsetting often when people miss it, because they feel the opportunities during days like this are few and far between. So you're right, it is a great training tool. To me, it's called mental endurance, which is being able to maintain a high level of focus and concentration over an extended period of time. And I think that traders get rewarded for that, but it is a difficult task on days where you feel like you're twiddling your thumbs more than you would like to.
Yeah, agreed. And well, good. And yes, mental endurance is actually a great description for it, because it can be exhausting staring at charts all day. And I find it even more exhausting when you're not actually doing anything, because I think we all have the tendency, especially in this modern day and age where we're convinced we all have to be busy at all times, to say, I didn't actually accomplish anything today, when you could actually accomplish a lot by doing nothing. You know what I mean? Like by not hitting the button and not losing money, or not entering poor technical trades, you've actually done a lot to train yourself, as you say, to develop that mental endurance by which you can pay attention. And if you manage to do that for hours on end, and took that one trade opportunity that made sense, and you can take a look at it at the end of the day and be happy with it, that's a pretty good day, pretty good use of a day, I would argue.
Yeah, and traders need not to we all like the immediate gratification. You make a trade, you make money, you get feedback immediately. But sometimes there's a lag time between the learning concepts and, like you said, the endurance concepts. If you just think about physical endurance, like an athlete will train to be, like say a tennis player, do significant training. They prefer to have a match that may last an hour and a half. But if you get it into the opens and you have 5-set matches that last 3 or 4 hours, right, like that's when it's really going to pay off. And so sometimes there's a lag time between the work you put in and seeing the fruits of your labor. And, so I think that work, you can't look at it as just, I do the work and what am I getting back for it immediately? The payoff is in kind of the long-term process and gains.
Yeah. Agreed. And yeah, it's a good analogy when you go to sports, whether that's tennis, or I think of runners, right? Like if you're a marathoner, right, or an ultra marathoner, think of how many boring miles you have to put in to get ready for that, that 100-mile race if you're an ultra
Well, I'll tell you,
runner?
Peter, a bunch of years ago, I was running in a 6-hour race, and it was, my goal at that point was to do a little over 40 miles. And it was a 2.3-mile loop in a park. And there was one, they have people along there who are counting laps for people. And the best compliment I ever got from the guy at the end of the race, because my times were very even splits throughout the whole 6 hours, was he said to me, he didn't know my name. He said, "Oh, there's Steady Eddie." He goes, "You look the same on lap 1 as you did on lap 8 and lap 15." And that was the highest compliment, because that's what the goal is on those endurance events, is to maintain the consistency and continuity of your pacing, because that's the real payoff in the end.
There you go. Actually, yes, and well said. And that directly applies to training, because you're right. If you look good at the open, but then and if you're sticking around for the rest of the day but fade off, then you basically, that mental endurance probably isn't present. So anyway, excellent. Okay, well, we have a couple of questions, I think.
Sure.
Let me just
see one from Hans there.
Yeah, I see that. Well, why don't if you're already reading it, maybe I don't need to read it out loud to you. You can take it.
So, the question about, Hans, whether you need, do traders need a major hobby or interest outside of trading to stay happy or sane in life? Let me just say, this gets to the overall question, and this goes for traders and not traders, but a high pressure business like trading is particularly important. I think the more balance people have in their lives, the better. You can have work, trading, you could have, friends and family life, and then you could have hobbies and other interests. And so I think the more diversity that people have in their lives like that, the greater balance. And the reason is, it's very nice to have, whether you have a good relationship in your life or a hobby that you like, it's always good, because when one of those areas may be struggling or less pleasurable, it's always good to have other things to balance out. I think particularly with high stress endeavors like trading, it is good to have something that you find enjoyable and relaxing. And I just caution people, because when I first got into the finance world, I found out a lot of the high type A people would gravitate towards golf, because they felt it was kind of very paced and kind of low key. But then a bunch of these guys would approach golf like they did their trading and finance lives, and it became as stressful, just another form of stress and competition that didn't provide them with a break. So yes, I do think it's important to maintain some kind of hobby or other interest. I would try to do that in a way that kind of calls upon you in different ways than kind of more of the high intensity stress that maybe trading does. Something that maybe uses a different part of your brain or is a little more physical for your body, since you might be sedentary most of the day with trading. But I do think that the greater balance you have in your life and the more diversity in terms of activities and relationships and endeavors, kind of that leads to generally a more fulfilling and happier life. And that could include volunteer work and all kinds of things outside of trading.
When you say diversity of relationships, you of course mean friends and family, and like not
diversity of activity. Yes, yeah, yes, right,
checking.
Right, yes.
I'm just being difficult. All right, good. Bobby, Bobby's got an interesting question. Do you wanted to dig into being a long distance runner? Oh, but this seems more personal now that I read it. Inquiring minds want to know, Dr. Katz.
No, I don't know that individual, Bobby. There are a lot of those ultra runners out there. I don't really compete anymore, but I do run a lot still, but I stopped my longer distance racing a few years back. But I don't know that person, Cam Haynes, that you mentioned.
Cam Haynes, as you say, there's a lot of ultra marathons out there. And did I mention, anyways, I read this book that I thought was quite interesting. It was recommended by a member in the room, called Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins. So it was interesting book anyways. I'm not sure I agree with all of his statements. However, it talks about basically mental strength, right, and keeping focus.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day is what that book is really talking about. So, but it was a good read. He is intense. Yes, he is intense. And talking about having other endeavors, you notice there's things that he glosses over in his book. For instance, he sort of talks about the fact that he talks about his physical endeavors, and of course he went through, and that's the point of the book. But I think the first question relates to this, which is making me think of it, that you do have to make sure to balance the elements of your life, because he sort of happens to mention that he married his first wife twice, which means he married, got divorced, married her again, and then had a third wife, second wife, third marriage. Anyways, so
yeah,
so as much as he is absolutely intense, and there's no question he is a fit guy and an intense athlete, maybe didn't balance all of his life elements in that.
Well, also, when you say things like that, I mean, I think the key factor is when you see people replicating patterns of behavior over and over again, it means that perhaps they haven't really looked inward and kind of looked at how they can learn from previous errors, mistakes. We've talked about this a lot in trading, that losses are an inherent integral part of trading. And so the key is to use that experience to learn to move on in better ways and to improve your trading. So yes, again, I think providing greater balance makes that an easier thing, where you don't feel like all your eggs are in one basket. If trading is the only thing in your life, you're really dealing with the emotional volatility associated with how that trading is going each individual day. And that puts a lot of pressure on one aspect of your life.
Yeah, indeed. And and maybe just to not to dig into this too much, but one last comment I'll make is that one point of this book is he talks a lot about the challenges he went through in his life, which he felt he sort of needed to overcome, and he was more or less proving himself against. To what we've talked about frequently here on our Thoughtful Thursdays and other sessions as well. There's always other things happening in your life. Don't ignore them. Be aware of them. Be mindful of the fact that most of us have families. You might have a dog. You might, you've got financial pressures. There's things happening in every single person's life. Mm-hmm. All of that stuff is a mental weight, so to speak. And you're best served to acknowledge that it's there, understand how to manage it such that it doesn't catch you off guard when you're trading. The most obvious example we like to talk about is just getting a good night's rest, right? You like to think, hey, I only got 2 nights sleep, but I can get up, have a couple cups of coffee, a Red Bull, and I'm good to go. I can almost guarantee you, unless you're a superhuman type person, your trading is going to be impacted, probably negatively, right?
Yeah, listen, I think one of the characteristics of high-level traders is the ability to compartmentalize, right? To really focus on what you're doing. But like you said, it's important to not sweep the other issues under the rug, because they're likely to rear their ugly head in some fashion during the more stressful times of trading. So I think that's the key time to use time outside of trading to, like you said, Peter, address those other aspects of your life, both the enjoyment things as well as some of the more stressful, difficult areas that need to be kind of worked on or talked about. Because the more free you are with having addressed those things, first of all, it's very liberating. I think people underestimate the amount of energy that goes into kind of concealing things or not working out things in our lives. And then it just affords a lot more energy and freedom to be able to then focus on your trading in the way that is going to be most helpful and optimize performance.
Yeah, agreed. And again, just acknowledging that stuff exists, can help you deal with it. Again, to exactly what Dr. Katz was saying, that it's important to know that, hey, if you didn't sleep well the night before, or if you're dealing with, you had a fight with your dog in the morning, all right, maybe I'm going to trade slightly differently. I'm aware that maybe my emotions are more on edge. You're more likely to make mistakes, or, those are the days where you sort of decide to ignore your rules because, you're angry, you're frustrated, even if you're excited, it could be a great thing happening in your life and you're just super excited. You start hitting buttons. Just be aware of it. You can better manage your trading day as well as other aspects.
Yeah.
Let's get to some member questions here. Zen's got one at 347. He said often he's struggling with stop-outs, as many of us do, and you watch Andrew and Thor, who are two world-class athlete-type traders here, and when they're making it look easy and hitting all the points, it seems, and just trading like it's nothing. How do you manage yourself through that to ward off the emotions you get? I presume he means frustration when you're watching them do so well and you may be struggling.
Well, first of all, I would say one of the steps is to avoid trying to compare yourself to others. We tend to do that more when we're not feeling good about our trading, and that's a recipe for disaster. I could point out probably traders to you who are trading poorly or kind of less productively than you are, and I could point out traders who are doing a better job. So I think the key is not how other people are doing. The key is to take really what you're doing, kind of identify the errors and the problem areas, and try to make the corrective action there. And also to try to highlight the areas that you're doing well to not only build your own confidence, but to actually build upon the things that you are doing well. We could all look at NBA players and, look at them and go, well, why can't I dribble a basketball or shoot a basketball like that? I mean, we're only going to make ourselves feel we're less good about our own skills in those kinds of situations. There are very talented people in this world. Some of that's a product of innate ability, a lot of practice, a lot of factors. So I think the key is, I have found actually even top traders, and this happens in one of the firms that I work with, when I had a bunch of the guys suggest turning off what they have in their office called track, which is to tracking, seeing how other people in the firm are performing. And that was a major thing that was incredibly helpful because it helped them not only do to avoid the comparison aspect, but it then actually freed up all this energy and time and focus to put on their trading. And they really kind of just honed in on what they needed to do better and their own performance. Because ultimately, if you're feeling good about your progress and your performance, it's less important about how the people around you are doing.
The keeping up with the Joneses, right? It is actually a bad
Yeah, absolutely. It is, yeah.
Yeah. Just to share a personal story, I used to fall into that because it does seem to be a North American, well, it's a modern day life trait, right? We all like to look over the little picket fence and we see, oh my God, look at our neighbors, they're doing so well. I had an episode early in my life where it was one of those, right? I had some friends that were doing fantastically well and they had the new cars and they just bought a house and it was all good until they sort of got divorced and both had to declare bankruptcy. So basically they were overspending so much that it affected their marriage. Everything fell apart and neither one of them could afford the stuff that they had. It really sort of gave me an opportunity to say, you know what, it's dangerous watching someone else because you honestly don't know what's happening. So that applies in trading. Don't look at someone else's trades. You don't know what went behind that. And to echo something that Hans said, there are a lot of losing trades that sometimes don't get published. Not intentionally, but when you have a loser, sometimes it happens real fast. Winners, you can often ride longer. So don't assume that it's only good trades that Andrew or Thor are taking. Thor's very open when he shares in this room. That's one of the things I love about him. He'll show you. He said, "Look, it took me 4 times. So yeah, this is a great trade, but I had the tenacity to follow it 4 times because I had confidence in this move. It took me a while to get the timing right, or whatever the case may be."
Yeah, and Peter, as I've talked about here before in other places, we kind of live in this, Instagram type world where people are posting the best of themselves and the best of things. And so we only often compare ourselves to look at that great trade or look at that great restaurant or look at that great house or whatever it is. And people are not seeing, the more balanced view of things. So that is a little bit of difficulty. There's not usually a tendency for traders to post, hey, here are the, 17 lousy trades I made this week, pile on. So we don't really get a skewed view of really what goes on for people. And I think that's a dangerous thing when people are not feeling great about their performance and comparing themselves to others.
Right. Agreed. Nagraj is asking, why do different stocks trade differently? In other words, what do they have personality? Is it psychology of the people, or what's providing that behavior? It's sort of half a technical question and half a psychology question. I'm not sure. I'm happy to give a shot at it, or Dr. Katz, you can start.
Go ahead.
Well, so now,
you start first, and I'll add on because that may be more of a technical thing.
Yeah, let me say I would agree that different stocks have a different personality. Exactly why, that's one that frankly I wouldn't want to mislead you. I don't honestly know. I can tell you that stocks, some stocks just trade differently than others. Sometimes it's a factor of price. Sometimes it's I think it's a big factor, frankly, of who is trading it, meaning that some have a high, retail component, some are more institutionally traded. You've heard us, if I just extract this to a macro level, we've commented many times how stocks on the New York Stock Exchange, right, NYSE stocks, trade differently than those on the NASDAQ. Well, they are managed differently on the back end by the market makers, so that creates a slightly different personality. If you've watched stocks for a while, you can certainly say a stock like Zoom trades a lot different than a stock like General Motors or GE, right? So, I do think there's personalities. I guess my suggestion would be, it's one of those things sometimes it's good to acknowledge the fact that stocks will trade slightly differently. You don't necessarily have to understand why, because I think there's so many factors, it's very tough sometimes to unpick that. But I'd be interested.
And it's just like personality. You could meet two people who
Right.
could both, like, say, be very angry people. You meet them and they just have a level of anger. Well, what might be the precipitating aspects of their background or their personalities that led to that style of behavior might be vastly different, but their outward appearance appears the same. So we don't really know the underlying factors. And I think in trading, if you spend too much time trying to figure that out, you're not really responded to what you're seeing. And if somebody is a mean, angry person, that may not be a good person to have in your life, regardless of what the precipitating factors might be in their lives, which led them to be that way.
Yeah, that's actually a good point, where exhibited behaviors don't always come from the same sources, right? So,
No. And I can tell you, working with a lot of athletes as well, you could see athletes with similar kind of performance issues. And when you get down beneath the surface, what helps one person, and this is traders too, what helps one person get from A to B might be, like when I work with them, might be vastly different than another person because of how their personality is, how they're wired, the underlying kind of fears or psychological variables and emotional variables that are playing into it. They could look like they have the same issues from the outside, but the underlying situation could be vastly different. And then therefore how one helps somebody in those situations could vary greatly.
yes, indeed. We have one more question I want to get to. Let me just mention, guys, it's 2 minutes, a little less than 2 minutes to the close. So if you're in a trade, be aware of that. We will do the trade of the day. We'll do that after this last question, which might happen just after the closing bell, but stick around. Be good to see the trade of the day from our member. And the last one will come from Bobby. Bobby is asking at 3:52 here. I've been fighting early partials for a couple of months. So I get an early partial, then I get stopped out at break even. And then this stock runs, and would have given me big profits. Considering just accepting that this is my style, and instead of fighting it, embrace it. Then I could just reanalyze and re-enter if the setup is still there. Any thoughts? So again, another sort of pseudo-technical question, but there's definitely a psychological component to it.
Well, you can hit that first, Peter, if you want.
So, Bobby, we've actually talked about this week a couple of times, and I have dealt with the same thing, right? Because it's one of those where, and not to give you too big of a story, but I have analyzed my trades, and I realized that if I held my trades and never took a partial until I got 4 or 5 times my risk, I think the number was like I could make 6 times the amount of money I'm making today. The problem with doing that is that my win rate currently was in like the mid 80s. So I think it was like 83, 84%. That's pretty good. My win rate, if I held until I got that 6R, would only be something like 40%. So I've looked at that hard, and I realized psychologically, I don't think I'd be capable of holding so many losers, letting so many stocks lose, or trades lose. There's the closing bell. To get those big winners, which means I would probably misplay the winners and I wouldn't actually achieve the gains that theoretically on paper I could. So I've had to find another way to manage that. So in my case, what I've done is I've gone to taking smaller partials to give me that comfort such that I could keep more of my share size for later. So to your point, I've partially acknowledged, yes, I need to take that partial to feel comfortable, and maybe that's part of my style. But I've also continued to look at what other ways could I change my style to fit my psychological makeup such that I could then hopefully, keep more for the bigger gains.
Yeah, so I think, Peter, what you said is really the key, which is people have to fit their trading style to their personality. You can't be somebody other than who you are. It doesn't mean we can't change incrementally and gradually and slowly by pushing ourselves out of our comfort zone, but you can't be somebody who you're not. And so you clearly found a way that works for you, and you try to get incrementally better on that, but you don't try to kind of do something significantly different because it will have an emotional, psychological cost that could actually inhibit your trading overall.
Right. Agreed. Okay, well, look, Dr. Katz, thank you so much. The bell's
Okay.
gone. We're at the end of the day. Thank you for that and for your insight as always. I appreciate it.
Have a good day.
You too, sir. So, I said we're going to get to the member trade of the day. Here it is. Let's take a look at this member trade of the day. And this is a good trade. And you know what? I have to share some embarrassment here. I don't remember whose trade it was. Oh my goodness, I'm failing on all counts. 1 second. Hate not to be able to tell you whose trade this is. Oh my goodness. Look at this. It's Mr. Spock once again. This is a Mr. Spock trade. He recognizes it. There you go. You're speaking up. So, congrats. I think that's the second time this week you've had a trade of the day, haven't you? What I liked about this one is I like the fact that and actually, oddly, it relates to exactly what we were just talking about. Look how, so great entry here. There's no question there's a great entry on this trade. And then you took a quick partial. And this maybe, I'm not sure why. You didn't explain your motivation, but you said you wanted to play it safe, which I guess maybe is a little bit of that. So again, you took a small partial, but allowed you to feel comfortable. And then look how much you let it run up until your targeted partial at the daily level. You took another one at the sort of even dollar amount, held through the next pull, added to the trade. Like, I just like the way you managed this, right? You took an early quick partial like you were scalping it just to give yourself comfort, but then you started to manage it like a long-term trend trade. So you were able to change styles mid-trade and really maximize your opportunity. So I think this is an excellent trade, well demonstrated. Interesting because SQ, we've talked about it. SQ didn't have a lot of, signals pre-market, but as we know from trading in this room, often SQ will not trade well pre-market and yet still have a great day. And this was a good example. So nice trade, Mr. Spock. Well done. Well deserved for the trade of the day. And don't forget, tomorrow we will be broadcasting onto YouTube live our trade of the week. So out of the trades of the day will come the trade of the week. And something to look forward to tomorrow afternoon at 3:30 when we put that live onto YouTube. Looking at the end of the day here, we don't really have any earnings. I didn't see anything interesting on the earnings front that is coming up that really invites us to stick around. So I think with that, we're going to end our broadcast for today. Don't forget to give us a like on Facebook. We would appreciate that, assuming you like it. If not, give us some feedback. We'd love to hear your feedback on what we can do differently to help manage the experience and make it better for you. We'd greatly appreciate that. And feel free to join us for the pre-market show at 8:30 tomorrow morning with Norm and Carlos, and trading live all day in the room. If you want to join us, as we said many times, we have a couple of promos. I don't have those screens up for you, but if you remember, you can join for a 1-week trial using the code PREMARKET24, $24 for a 1-week trial. Well worth it. I have conviction that you'll find value in the room. I can't promise you, but I do think it's a great value, and I think you will enjoy it. So give it a shot. And if you've done that, or you're just ready to join as a lifetime member, please do. We've got a 35% discount right now. So as we mentioned before, a little, not well, this is where we're at right now for the discounts, 35% discount. The code is LABOR35, and that's off the one-time payment of our lifetime membership. So either one of those will work. All right. Thank you so much, those on YouTube. Again, we'll see you tomorrow morning or tomorrow afternoon.